Thank you, Patrick. And there's Beth. Great. If you could just put into the chat your institutional affiliation, just so we know where everybody's coming from, that would be great. I see lots of names and faces that I don't necessarily recognize. That's really great. Because that's one of our goals, right? Is to bring this community together. Seeing Buffalo, USC, Duke, Harvard, UTMB. UNC, awesome. Chicago. Great. We are just a great distribution of people across the country too. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share some slides. And we're just going to walk through what our plan for today is really to just kind of walk through what's going on with this project and what maybe you can expect. I'm going to talk for just about 5 minutes probably, and then open it up for your questions. And feel free to put your cameras on so we can see all your lovely faces, if you feel so moved. All right. So great to see you all here today. Thank you for coming. This is our TSAG pilot implementation study of team science trainings and interventions. This is our informational session. Hopefully you have all had a chance to review all of the materials that we have up on the website. So I wanted to start by just giving a quick overview of the modules that we have going on. So first we have Dr. Wayne McCormick from the University of Florida, who is involved with the CTS, leading the CTS team training. We have Dr. Beth LaPense from University of Michigan, who leads the research jams. Dr. Kevin Wooten from UTMB, leading team maps. Dr. Marisa Rinkus from Michigan State, leading the Toolbox Dialogue Initiative. And I'm here at the University of Wisconsin, leading the collaboration planning. So I am the Director of Team Science and Research Development here at the University of Wisconsin's Carbone Cancer Center and Institute for Clinical and Translational Research, our CTSA. And I wanted to just kind of give you a brief overview of how this project came about, because I think it'll help you understand what we're trying to accomplish here. So about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in the TSAG, which is the Team Science Affinity Group that is run by Dr. Wooten, we started talking about this idea of creating evidence-based interventions and trainings that team science core leaders could implement at their sites. And how would we go about doing that? So a core group of us met several times. We had some discussions with the TSAG about what would you want to know? What are the things that you're struggling with in your team science core at your CTSA? And we came to this idea of what if we did this really cool thing of launching a pilot where we would give team science core leaders access to some evidence-informed trainings or interventions. And we would just see what happened if we had team science core leaders at CTSAs implementing them. Honestly, this has never been done before in the team science world. This is a really the first time this has ever been done with team science trainings and interventions that we know of. And so I just wanted to be really clear with everyone about this, that this is an experiment, right? This is a pilot. We're trying this. We're going to see if it works. And so, you can expect if you decide to sign up for this, there might be some bumps and hiccups along the way, right? We've tried to anticipate every possible challenge, but of course, we're only a handful of people. So there might be things that, that might be a little bit of a struggle the first time through. So we really appreciate your willingness to be involved in this scientific effort. I wanted to just take a minute to recognize and thank the pilot study committee members. These are people who have met pretty much monthly, maybe sometimes a little more frequently. You see, we've got a great representation of the CTSAs and really appreciate all the time and effort that this group has put into developing this pilot. So in terms of the project overview, we're really limiting this to CTSA hubs, and we've had a lot of interest from beyond the CTSA hubs, including cancer centers and other organizations. But for this iteration, we're really keeping it to the CTSA hubs to sort of assess how that works within that population specifically. So the way that the implementation works is that you will sign up for whatever modules that you think are interesting to you, your populations, etc. You will take part in a training led by the module leaders. For example, I will be leading a training in collaboration planning for facilitators. After that, you'll be responsible for setting up your local systems for recruitment. So you will need to recruit teams from your CTSA to, say, for example, do collaboration planning with them. And we have some data that we'll ask you to collect, and each of the modules will have its own data collection. We also will have a central data collection for some common data elements and some common implementation metrics. And if, like this says here, following implementation, we'll ask you to submit your evaluation data to the module leaders. So in terms of support, so once you get trained in delivering and implementing this intervention or training, what kind of support do you get after that? We don't have funds to help you directly implement the interventions, but we do plan to have some modest technical support. So if you have questions that come up, you can email the module leader. In collaboration planning, we are planning a community of practice where we will have monthly meetings where anybody who's implementing collaboration planning can come to that meeting, share case studies, share problems that you're having, any adaptations that you've made that you think are really great that we want to share with this community. We really want this to be a learning community where everybody is developing together. So a quick review of the timeline. March 29th is when the application form will be due. It's there. We've kept it as simple as we possibly could. I think the most challenging part will be that we have asked for a letter of support from your CTSA director or directors, just so that we know that there is support for implementing this, because it's not a small lift, right? These are going to take time to implement. Then by April 7th, we hope to have those acceptances out. And then April 10th, we will have a project kickoff meeting that we will just, again, get everybody on the same page. There are some pre-implementation surveys that we want to do about feasibility and usability. And then in late April and early May, the individual module trainings will begin. So I think we've got collaboration planning scheduled for April 28th. So you will, whatever modules you choose to participate in, you will attend separate trainings for each of those. And each of the module leaders will let you know what that looks like. And then we're envisioning sort of, and this is where it gets a little fuzzy, we're envisioning maybe like a year or so of data collection and implementation, and we'll kind of see how that goes. We might, for the projects that aren't able to, or the CTSAs or cancer centers that aren't able to participate in this round, we might launch a second round. We're still playing around with that, but that's the general project timeline. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. And we will open it up for questions. And if you can use your Zoom hand, I think that would be best. Actually, before we do that, any of the module leaders want to add anything to that that high level overview? No. All right. I see Mariam has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm Mariam Gholami from UC San Diego, CTSA, and I'm highly interested in this program. But my question is the projects that we need to implement in our hubs. What are the scopes? Are we picking them up, or should they align with the specific questions or structure that the modules will let us know?
So I'm not sure that I understand your question. So we have interventions or trainings that you can implement with your populations. Mm-hmm. So we would expect that you would implement, again, I'm using collaboration planning because that's the one I'm most familiar with, as is, mm-hmm. And then collect data on how the teams, from the teams on how that goes.
Okay, so there's basically what we learn in the trainings, we implement them and then collect data from that implementation process.
Correct.
For me to make sure I'm getting the most out of this, I'm not sure if I can attend to all the 5 modules, but I have some projects in my head that I would love to start working on. I wanted to know if there's a consultation that I can explain what I'm thinking of, and some of the module leaders could help me understand which module would be the most beneficial for that route, that help me accomplish that or implement that change.
Yeah, why don't you reach out to Patrick
Mm-hmm.
and let him know a little bit more about what you're thinking, and then we can go from there.
Sounds perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Mariam. Other questions? And Wayne is emphasizing in the chat here that you can pick any module that best fits your training program or more than one. And, you know, like you're saying, Mariam, it might be a lot to implement all 5, right? So in this round, you might want to just pick a couple that you think will be the highest impact for you, and then think about the others later. Or you might want to have somebody else from your team
Definitely.
who does. Yep. Awesome. Thank you. All right, Drew.
Unmute myself. There we go. Thank you. A lot of, so I looked through the website, and a lot of the modules say something like, in terms of like what kind of experience is needed. I'm kind of new to team science. We're kind of new to like thinking about running these kinds of programs.
Yep.
And so it says, facilitation experience and project management support are, needed experiences. So could someone say a little bit more about what that means exactly? Like what is meant by facilitation experience specifically?
Great question. So I think it's pretty basic,
Okay.
right? Just like if you have experience facilitating meetings ever, I think that you would be set, especially because like in collaboration planning, we have a script and a facilitator's guide that really walks you through exactly what needs to happen. And I'm guessing the other projects have that as well. And I think what we meant by project management help is that somebody, it's going to be some tracking, some, following up with people. Hey, you need to fill out this survey and we need to get that data back, those sorts of things.
Okay.
So pretty minimal.
Very similar to what I've been learning to do in my first year working with Frontier. So, okay.
Yep.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Drew. All right, Caitlin.
Yeah, I just had a question. If we have interest in multiple modules, can we designate separate implementers for each of those training modules? So let's say there's 2 we're interested in, and we have one implementer that would do the collaboration planning. They'd be trained on the collaboration planning, and then the other implementer would be trained potentially on research jams.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great approach, not only to sort of manage, your own energy and your own bandwidth, but then you have multiple people in your team science core, right, who can do different things. So I think that's a great approach. And you could even get, everybody trained on all the different things and then have them implement in different ways.
Okay, great. And then I just have one more question.
Yes.
Can we have an implementer that's outside of the CTSA? Like if we have somebody from a cancer center that's interested in being an implementer, can they go to the training, or does it really have to be through the CTSA?
You're really getting into that gray area, Caitlin. I think the way that we're thinking about this is we only want to collect data from CTSA, from translational teams. That's that we know that cancer centers also have translational teams, right? So I think as long as we are clear that we're collecting evaluation data, implementation data on translational teams, I think it's okay.
Okay.
We're just making decisions on the fly.
Thank you.
Great questions. Other questions or thoughts? What are you worried about when thinking about this? What have we forgotten to worry about? Drew.
Okay. I can go again.
Please.
Because it's so so we have a team science function. I'm from the team science function. It's half of the community and collaboration core at Frontiers. And so it's me and the 2 co-directors, and that's all the whole lot of us, as far as like official, Frontiers team science people. So, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering how many people, like if we want to run collaboration planning, could a single person be in charge of the whole thing and get it done? Or does it need to be like one person with a couple people helping them? Or like, is there a benefit to having 2 people fully trained on it? Or I guess that's kind of a lot of questions, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I can just tell you about our experience here at UW,
Mhm.
which is that I have done all of our 40 collaboration planning sessions over the past, 4 years.
Okay.
I like to do it with an observer / evaluator in the
Mhm.
session with me to take notes. That has really been helpful for me as that observer will sometimes see, oh, hey, you asked this question differently this time. And that worked really well. Or, the team that we just worked with didn't really understand these 3 questions. I wonder if we need to revisit those. So that kind of data from an observer can be really helpful. But it really depends on the number of teams that you want to engage with, for example, collaboration planning. If you have like 30 teams, you might and you want to do it in like 2 months, right? You might benefit from having 2 different people do that.
Yeah.
But if you think it's, so I think it's more about your bandwidth than
Okay.
anything specific to the intervention.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I see Lisa says, do you have any ballpark estimates of cost, funding, and resources needed for implementation? Yeah, Lisa, I think it really, so the toolbox has a charge per participant. So that's something to take a look at. For the others, it's really just about, how much, like you say, the number of participants and how much time you want to devote to it. So there aren't, as far as I know from any of the other modules, please feel free to speak up, but I don't think there are any other additional like external costs, right? There aren't materials or anything like that. Does anybody else want to speak to this question?
Probably the biggest cost is time.
Mhm.
It's your faculty time, it's your staff time, whoever's doing the implementing, that's really the biggest cost.
Agreed.
I can pipe in as well and build on Wayne's comments. I think most of our module materials will be housed online. So in terms of production of materials, you may, however, depending on how you implement something, wish to produce those and provide them. But at least all of the map stuff is going to be completely virtual. So you won't have the cost of doing that.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, Tyron.
Hello there. Actually, the question I have, well, first of all, I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, so let me start with that there. So, born and raised in Milwaukee, so I just came to Alabama 2 years ago.
Awesome.
But be that as it is. And so, but no, actually, the question I have, and it may have somewhat been answered already, but for the modules that we have listed here, are these programs that are being presented to us that we're meant to implement, are we looking to actually create a program to like basically structure around implementing, or is it something that maybe we will look at as incorporating in an existing program that we have, or added as a module to an existing program that we may have to supplement something that's already been in place? Like, what exactly is the vision that you kind of want to get from it so that we know what kind of feedback to get and, how the data won't be skewed if we give it back to you all?
That is an excellent question. So I think we had a few different goals in doing this. The first really was this idea that, so many CTSAs have people who are new to team science, and how can we help them ramp up really quickly and give them evidence-based interventions to implement in their programs, right? So that was one of our main areas of focus there, was to really create kind of plug and play trainings and interventions that people who are new could use, almost like a training mechanism to get up to speed with team science. We also, as science of team science researchers, there are no sort of standard criteria for whether an intervention is effective. And so we're trying to create some common data elements so that, again, if you want to say, I have this challenge with my teams, I want to find an intervention to help them, that you can go and look at what's available and say, oh, these have been evaluated along the same criteria. And so I know I can see that this one is going to be effective in my population, et cetera. So I think the way that you implement and the way you integrate it into your program is going to be highly individual based on the CTSA, right? If your CTSA is fairly new to team science, it might just kind of get, plopped in and see what happens. But if you have more, if you already have existing trainings or if you have existing interventions, you might need to weave it in a little bit more into those programmatic offerings. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. No, that's
Okay.
actually a great answer.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Wayne.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that a little bit and mention that this touches on Hannah's question in the chat as well. So, if you're new, if you're looking for something that does not exist already, maybe one of these tools will help. If you look at your existing program and you realize there's a gap or a deficiency, maybe one of these tools will help, or maybe there's something you're just not happy with and you want to tweak it. Maybe one of these tools would be something that you would want to pilot to improve on something that you're not happy with. So there's a lot of different ways to integrate it. Everybody has specific aims for their T or K program. And so it's a matter of harmonizing or whatever, filling in the gaps, whatever the case may be, that we're hoping these tools will help.
Thanks, Wayne. All right, Krista.
Yeah, so I'm feeling a little self-conscious about this question. I'm sorry if it's a silly one. I'm sort of a more junior member of our team, just sort of trying to learn more and to take it back to others. So I represent our community engagement and research core. So we do work in collaboration, but at least I wouldn't say that we sort of work in team science. I'm trying to figure out if this is a fit for us. And then you also mentioned that you're looking at sort of translational teams. So we sit within our CTSA, but we do more sort of community engagement, and those are sort of the teams that we work with.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if any of the modules would be a fit for that, and if that would even be an appropriate use of these trainings.
Yeah, so I will speak again to collaboration planning, which we have done with a lot of community engaged teams. And it can be, sometimes it's more challenging because those teams tend to be bigger, right? But also what we found, and this is part of the paper that we published on the first iteration of collaboration planning, is that the community engaged teams are already involved and engaged in so much sense making that the idea of collaboration planning makes complete sense to them in a way that it doesn't always, resonate with like basic scientists who, work very differently. So I think from my perspective, collaboration planning works really well with the community engaged teams. And I don't know if the others want to speak to their modules as well.
So for research jams, just to kind of say, same as Betsy, we've definitely worked with community engaged teams. I would say kind of really for us in terms of research jams, it's all about the experience of creating that equity of voice. So we do think it's a good model to bring in community members, to bring in patient advisors, other organizations outside of the university, and to be able to kind of create spaces where everybody's voices are heard and elevated. So we have had good experience engaging folks outside of academia in research jams.
Thanks, Beth. And I believe the toolbox is also done a lot with community engaged groups, right? Maurice is nodding. Yeah. I see you typing. You're probably typing a response.
Yeah, sorry, I was typing a response to someone, but yes, we have worked with all different kinds of community groups. They don't have to be research teams. It just has to be a group of people that are coming together to reach a common goal. And I'm happy to talk with anyone about how that might be useful or how a dialogue might be useful. So the training that we're offering as part of that for this module would be for people who want to try to implement a toolbox dialogue with a particular group or team. And so it could be many people from this group all together. It would be sort of different people from different hubs mixed together in kind of a training in that way. And I'm typing a little something in the chat for y'all, but
Thanks, Marisa.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, did you want to add?
Yeah, just building pretty much on what everybody has said. Team Maps has really been designed specifically for research teams, keeping in mind that oftentimes community members should be members of those actual research teams. But the skills are pretty universal across teams. All the examples and cases are research team specific, but I will say that we have in the future downstream plans to develop a specific module for community engagement that would be an add-on to the program. So that's been a goal of ours from the very beginning.
And I think, looking at Hannah's question about finding teams that are willing to participate and bringing that back to Krista as well. One of the big challenges with community engaged teams is they are often just this little tiny bit on the grant, right? And so using their time for one of these interventions might not be the best, what they think is the best use of their time. So that's something to think about. And it just more broadly, it can be challenging to market this to teams and get people to participate. So that's definitely something that you may have to invest some time and energy in. The way that we have implemented collaboration planning is a required part of our pilots. So anybody who gets an ICTR pilot has to do collaboration planning, or is highly encouraged to do collaboration planning. And now that some of them have done that, we're starting to see sort of word of mouth, additional groups coming to me and saying, hey, I heard this was really great. Let's try to do that. So that's just something to keep in mind, that there will be an investment of time in recruiting teams, because these are things that are kind of new to people and they might not know sort of what the benefits are. And our facilitator training has a script that you can use to email teams. We talk to them about, it's a great, for the senior people who think they don't need any team science training, it's a great opportunity for your early career researchers. And we pretend that they don't also need the team science training, that it can be helpful with your multi-PI plan, or if you're writing an administrative core, those sorts of things. So there are ways to sell these. And I think all of us will have some thoughts on those. Let's see, Susan asks, is there a minimum number of teams? We don't have a minimum that we have set. I think there's something for you to consider, though, the time investment of getting trained and getting this up and running. Are you going to be able to recruit enough teams that it makes that time investment worth it for you? So I think that's kind of an individual decision. Delman says cost per person. Marissa put that in there. All right, Caitlin.
Yeah, I have two more questions. I think you answered the other one. It was kind of about, so each of these modules have been tested and you have worked with teams with each of them. And we're a little bit worried about the time commitment that might be needed for some of them from our teams. And so I was curious for each of them if they were all kind of part of a mandated program. It sounds like for collaboration planning, it was mandated to some extent for the pilot program. I'm curious about the other modules.
I'll start. That's a great question. The time commitment is always a real issue operationally and just in terms of workflow. So we are just now getting our first 7 institutions leader trained to implement team maps. I will say that there's a part of this, and I'll only speak for team maps. It depends on how you want to implement it. Like our program allows you to do different modules and different configurations. And it's put into smaller units, so you could actually spread it over a period of time, because it is difficult, I well understand, to ask someone to give up a day or a day and a half. That's a huge commitment. So my best advice is to think about what the need is that you have, how great that need is, and if you can provide a compelling business case for why an exchange of 8 hours would be worth their time. I do like the idea, and we have done this a bit in the past with other programs, particularly for pilots, making specific team science activities, be it a studio or just kind of a workshop to find out where people are. That's a really good way to get a critical mass of people with a set of skills in a given institution. So let me be quiet and let the others address this.
Wayne, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so on the CTS teams, for example, that's probably a different kind of time commitment. It was designed for pre-doctoral teams in our TL1 program, but I think it could be used with postdoctoral trainees as well. And if you haven't watched the video, please watch the video. As I explained, there's kind of two parts to the intervention. One is a team science course. So if you're looking for a course on team science skills, developing team science skills with students, that would be like a 1 semester commitment. But the other part of it is a team training experience where the trainees are actually collaborating in a cross-disciplinary fashion and embedding this cross-disciplinary research into their dissertation. And so that, and we support our trainees for 2 years on the TL1 training grant. I'm open to having some flexibility on kind of what the timing is with your teams. So we would just need to kind of talk about it, but that's the way we implement it. It's kind of a 2-year experience with the collaborative research projects, and in the very beginning of that 2 years is a semester-long course about team science that really gives them the tools that they can be putting into practice during the experiential part.
Thanks, Wayne. Marisa.
Yeah, so I'll just say that, a toolbox dialogue workshop itself, as far as the responsibility or commitment on the part of a team would, can be anywhere from 2 hours to 3 hours. That's usually what we do right now with teams. We work with a number of NSF funded teams through NSF programs where it is a not required, but highly suggested part of their award. And we've also worked with other universities where it was, a component of a seed grant. But for a workshop to work, what we would want to do is to pair it with something that the team is working towards, right? It needs to be at a time that it has benefit to the team at that moment for them to discuss through some aspect of what they're doing, whether they're working towards a proposal, whether they're forming a team, whether they're trying to write a collaboration plan, whether they're trying to come up with a new research project, those types of things. So those are things that we would talk about in the training for implementers about when it would make the most sense to be beneficial to the team, because it is supposed to not be an extra thing they have to do, right? We work with lots of NSF teams who think, oh, NSF is making us do this extra thing that we don't want to do. And then they go through a workshop with us. We're like, whoa, that was really helpful. That really helped us think through the things we need to think through about how are we going to start this project? Where are we going? How are we going to onboard community members? How are we going to work together? How are we going to, these types of things. So that it should, those are things that we would talk about in the training and that I can consult on how to best fit this in so that it is not an extra something that doesn't sort of relate to what the team is trying to do and help meet their goals. So important part is just knowing what the goals are of the team.
Thanks, Marisa. Beth.
Yeah, so for University of Michigan, we don't mandate research jams. And so we do, I'm not going to say that the, work on our part or even like the faculty member that's like initiating a research jam for a new group is like insignificant. We do expect that there's at least one, we call it a faculty champion. So this is the person that's reaching out to us and saying, I want to have a research jam around topic X and get a lot of people in the room to start brainstorming. And so we do look to, just like Marisa was saying, that person to really define the goals and outcomes, both long-term and like, what do you expect in this, like, say, 4-hour session? And that's what's really going to help us to refine, say, framing questions or prompts that we're going to use throughout the session. It's typically for the faculty champion, maybe depending on how well refined their thinking is around this coming into that first meeting. It could get that all done in 2 hours. Sometimes, it's required, 6 meetings with that person to really make sure that everything is kind of designed to really meet the needs and the outcomes that they're desiring. for the actual larger group that's coming together to participate in the research jam, I mean, that is definitely a half-day event, and the timing certainly looks different in terms of whether there's in-person implementation or virtual implementation. Anything virtually we find takes more time, so you're going to want to tack about an hour on to anything virtually that we would do in person. I do think in terms of kind of like ways to think about how to use some of these modules is for us, we're moving into, the new iteration of the CTSA FOA. So we are really kicking off now into this translational science space. So we've been thinking about potentially weaving this in as a bit of a mandate for our pilot grant program, because translational science is very new to the research community, we found confusing to the research community. So we've actually been thinking about maybe incorporating research jams for pilot grant applicants so that we can help them even start designing their pilot projects and making sure that they're aligning with our expectations for translational science. So that is a way that we might think about kind of like mandating the experience, but it would be used, for a different purpose.
Thanks, Beth. And there's a question for you in the chat. For the research jams, would you please give some examples of complex or wicked research problems that teams focus on?
Oh, that's a great question. So we typically are at the level of someone coming to us and saying, we want to think about like those priorities in the space of cancer and aging, or transgender health research, or we've done work with a group that wanted to build like a space medicine collaborative. And so what does that look like? And, we have worked with groups where the question is a bit more refined. So we had a faculty member that was working in the area of scoliosis, and she wanted to bring a group together, but really wanted to focus on like pre-surgical methods and options for children. So we had, we kind of refined that and made that question a little bit more specific. But a lot of times we are at groups, we are working with groups at that really kind of like 40,000 foot view of, say, like cancer and aging. And you can imagine that could take so many different directions. And I think that gets into like, kind of some discussion we've been having about like community engagement and how that really can help like shape these different directions. And so that really that diversity in these sessions to, kind of be able to frame these really, really big spaces in a way that's going to be manageable to tackle moving forward.
Thanks, Beth. All right, Caitlin, did we answer all your questions, or did you have one more?
I did have one more.
Okay, good.
So far, kind of looking on the website, I have an understanding that's at a very high level of all of the different modules, but I don't think I'll fully understand or grasp them or have that in-depth understanding until actually going to the trainings for them. But it sounds like there's an application that's due at the end of March in which we choose the training modules that we would potentially like to implement. So I'm a little worried if I choose a training module that I think would be relevant or helpful to our teams, but then get into it and find maybe this won't be the best fit for the team. Would that be a problem? How should we handle that?
Yes, that's part of what we, part of the process. So I think that, absolutely, if you get into the training and you're like, oh, wait, this actually isn't going to work, I think that's completely fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can also, if you have questions, more specific questions about any of the modules, you can reach out to the module leader to get more details too.
Yeah, I was just about to say that I'm happy to meet with anyone by Zoom before the application is due to answer any other questions or concerns as you take a deeper look at the intervention. And just let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Same here.
Awesome. All right, Beth says she as well. Any of us you can reach out to? Any other thoughts or questions? All right. Are you excited? Is this fun? Are we looking forward to this? I know we are. Right, I got the 2 thumbs up. Tyron, awesome. All right, well, we don't have anything else, so if there are no more questions, we'll let you all go, but please do reach out to Patrick if you have general questions about the process of the pilot and being involved and what that means. You can reach out directly to any of the module leaders for more information there. Happy to chat. All right. Well, thank you to the module leaders for being here to answer questions. Thank you to all of you for showing up to learn more and for your interest in this program. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.